So how do I do this again? Because
You're asking me?
It's been a while.
Well,
I mean,
have you got the dick out of your mouth?
Thank you.
how you start.
Thank you for each and every one of those insults. I edited the podcast. I got to listen to it like a fan, and then I'd find like a little throwback gag, and I'm like, oh, that's great. I'll go back and piece together the audio they want, only to get to the end of that gag and resume editing the podcast. And be like, that was Mitch. He had a dick in his mouth. I'm like,
Did you gag on that dick in your mouth? Sorry.
I mean, well, yeah, by all means, carried over into episode 5. Yeah, no.
Well, and then what happens? You actually show up. So
Yeah, I know. I'm back. Back
don't
to
have to
turn your
You'll be
mic off when I need to. So we're into it. Let's go.
Well, you're getting
Sis.
close to being the Jonas of the group. So
All right.
It's not as fun now because he's here to defend himself.
Get into Gates. We are up to episode 5 of the podcast. We'll get into what exactly that entails in just a second. My name is Mitch. I'm finally back on board. Thank you to yourself, Maddie, and Brendan and Reese for steering the ship when I was
keeping
gone.
it going.
Just
Keeping
keeping
it
it going.
Indeed.
So welcome.
Just call me Jack Sparrow.
what?
Captain. Mr. the...
Wrong reference.
Cut that out.
Maybe Jack O'Neill.
He's had steering the ship.
The Venn diagram of Stargate
Could have been a hut
and Pirates of the Caribbean.
Just... Could have been an Alkesh. Could have been a Be the Glider. You know, it's all ship.
That's
What is
all,
a Jack
that's-
Sparrow?
Same ship to me.
That's all stuff beyond Reese.
Now that
is
you've spoken,
what is
I've got to
an Alkesh.
introduce you, Lincoln. You're making your debut on the show. Lincoln, lower
Hold on to it, son!
You know, ratings drop, bringing the big guns.
when you plug First Commandment, you need something else to bring in the audience.
Yes, we are talking the First Commandment, described as the SG-1 team is sent after the SG-9 team that has failed to return. They find that their captain, having been treated like a god by planetary inhabitants, is drunk with power and is tyrannical. Oh, God, I knew I'd screw up that word. How do you even say that word?
Tyrannical.
Yeah, but it's like
Are you reading the DVD
tyrannizing?
case?
I'm actually only because I'm getting to a point because
He's good.
Is it tyrannizing them?
Tyrannical.
It's like tyrannical, but it's tyrannizing is how they've
Tyrannizing.
Tyrannizing, sure. I've
That
never
sounds
actually
like-
read
that sounds like
before.
I believe it could be a soft J.
The only reason I wanted
I
to read
thought
it off
tyrannizing was like a verb in the Game of Thrones. Like you tyrannize.
Oh, you
something.
just got
see
You
what
tyrannized.
just got tyrannized. Mike.
It's a mic drop, not from very high, but sure. No, I only wanted to read it off the DVD because what I've just realised is that it's such a 90s sort of styling. Is that? I mean, we can get to the menu, which I'm starting to re-love.
they're
the
awesome.
menus of
Love 'em.
DVDs.
The
It feels like I'm
menu.
playing GoldenEye,
Yeah.
the Stargate edition, but it ends.
Natalia.
It's drunk with power. Never pick Italia.
Never picked Natalia in that
Why did
game.
they even make her a playable character? Honestly.
Sorry, back to game. I just needed my hate for Natalia in the game.
But they end off, he's drunk with power. Can they overcome him? And it's always up in a question like, is this the end of the Stargate
like-
SG-1 team? And you're
Mate.
like, no, because I can see there's 3 more
Mate, you
episodes on this disc.
You don't need to tease it. We bought the DVD.
Exactly. Like the last one, is,
I've got
will
9
they
more
find the
seasons
cause
of
in
this.
time to save their teammates? Yeah, probably.
Why don't they just say the one where the dickhead's on the planet and they got to stop him?
Yeah,
Like,
like
that would
Friends.
be
That's too many words. It's just the one you skip. That's all you need.
It could be like that, like Friends, right? The Friends always the one with the 2 something, or the one with the blind date. Like they could have this, like the one that you skip, as far as you can. So the First Commandment. It is directed by what's his name? I think it's Dennis Berry.
Dennis
Actually,
Berry.
this is the first time we've had a returning director. This guy directed The Enemy Within, so he's the first time we've had a return director.
Oh, so there's a pattern here.
But
Oh, the other one you skip.
ring-a-ding-ding, it is the first time an episode has been solely credited to the one Robert C. Cooper, Brendan's favourite contributor to Stargate SG-1.
Absolute cock.
Brendan, it's becoming,
Absolute cockhead.
it's becoming so clear why you hate him now.
I was going to say, if you think about it just based on this, how the
Yeah.
hell did he get another gig? Like,
I know.
why would they bring him back? back to write another episode based on this.
Like Mitch goes, oh yeah, but we've had 3 episodes.
Oh, yeah, you
in
have.
a row to talk about it.
I've listened to him.
And the more we talk about Robert C. Cooper about his contributions to SG-1, you'll learn to hate him as well.
Yes, well, I mean, okay, I won't
Well,
start
I'll put
off
it
by...
this way: he created Stargate Universe. Drop the mic. Like that was a horrible series.
I've never seen a second of that show, and I think I'm going to leave it at this point until 7 years down the track when we finish talking about SG-1.
Mate, it's not going to get any better with age.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really not.
It's not bad. Like, obviously, of the 3, it's the, red-headed pale stepchild of the 3, but you definitely love it the least.
Decapitated after 2 years. That's the one.
Benny, who does some of the other TV talk on Get Into Geek, he's already punched. I think he's gotten through everything except for Universe. He's up to there. He's done Atlantis, done SG-1. And he'd be an interesting guy to talk to while we do this show because in his mind, hey, potato, Atlantis for him is far better than SG-1, but SG-1 itself only got really good when Jack O'Neill wasn't in it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is Ben said early on that he didn't like Daniel Jackson.
Episodes where he doesn't appear, right? Episodes when he doesn't appear.
Like he does?
Oh, dear. Oh, no, what have we done? No.
He said early on, these two
He
least
got the
favorite...
clap for a couple of seasons.
Ben said his 2 least favorite characters are O'Neill and Jackson, and it's like...
What else
What?
is there?
So his
There's just a couple of
SG
indeeds thrown in
Yeah.
there.
And talk about vaginas being on the inside.
Yeah.
His thoughts on...
Vagina on the inside.
We've all seen Teague's vagina. It's definitely on the outside.
It's an outie.
So yeah, I feel like Ben's thoughts on Stargate need to be taken with a pinch of salt.
Well, we'll maybe get to the end of the first season. We can welcome him in for some special comments by Benjamin Clayton.
We'll do a season review.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he can be in politics, and we'll leave you two with it.
So, okay, we've got our overall thoughts of this episode. It's one that you can miss, but let's talk about it anyway. We're 6 minutes in. We can cap it at 38 minutes when the wormhole does close, of course. But I mean, I don't know. Where do you want to start with this one?
I just have one note. I go old school. I write in a book. I've just written in big capital letters, why does this even exist?
Jesus.
Maybe we can leave that till a bit later.
And then I've
start chronologically.
I've just followed it up with we're 5 episodes into this show. They've established that the main villain are humanoids who pose as gods. Why do we need one of our own to pose as a god?
Yeah,
for
so quickly.
one episode?
What is that? His second mission?
Yeah.
What's his name? Jonas.
Oh, you're better than me.
That's
Jonas.
this is actually my one note. Carter had a fiance called Jonas, which is this guy, which is hilarious. Like, what? That's such a random backstory to have. And it was only like, I gave the ring back. That's the only.
I think the only thing that jumps out at me for that is the thing where. We're going into future storylines with this one, but you see this tension.
Reese, cover your ears.
You see this tension between O'Neill and Carter.
Yeah, well, that's
and they're like,
obvious.
we can't do anything because of our military ranks. Yet all of a sudden, she used to be with this guy, and they're both in the Air Force.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, mate. No wonder you get the.
Just going to retcon it again.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm delving really deep into that. But,
I've definitely seen this episode more than a few times, but rewatching it for this podcast, I think this is the first time I've ever even picked up the fact that she was engaged to this guy.
I totally forgot
Because it didn't matter the first time you saw it. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, whatever.
it's kind of to set up for the later on in the episode, which I'm guessing we will get to. But it's just sort of she is his weak spot.
Yeah.
He's ruthless with everyone else and will not see anyone, will not talk to anyone else. They're all inferior to him, except for Carter.
Yeah.
He wants those reproductive organs. Luckily, she told us in the first episode.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'd be looking, where is it?
It all makes sense.
Oh, they're on the inside. Oh, that's why I couldn't
How
find
do I
them.
get to...
Oh,
do that
thanks,
then.
episode 1.
But as I was writing my notes as I was watching the episode, and I'm like, at least they didn't. It didn't jump right at you. They didn't ram it down your throat from the get go. It wasn't like they started like, I used to be engaged to this guy. This is why we broke up. It was just, look, I gave the ring back. Okay, so I know him. And you're like, hang on. And actually rewound it. I'm like, did she say ring? And I put on the captions to make sure. I'm like, hang on, she engaged this guy? And then 5 minutes later, there's another scene where she sort of hints along, and then eventually it's very much out in the open. They used to be together. He wants her back because he wants to make her his goddess. I mean,
Yeah, because
he's
what a
batshit
planet to retire on.
I know.
fucking blister me up, please.
Yeah, it's like all these,
go
all
again.
these other Minoan cultures with the giant golden ox statues
Yeah,
and thrones and
the
statues.
land of light and all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
You know, there's the land of endless partying and everything.
Yeah.
Where they're all like the. But he's
yeah,
like,
no.
nah.
He's
this
like,
one's-
nah, I choose.
This is it.
I choose planet melanoma.
Yeah.
And when it's not Planet Melanoma, I put shields up and it'll look like
Where the cave
Michael
dwells.
Bay's Bad Boys Miami the whole time. Everything's just orange. I'm like, you're right. Like by the end of it, not to skip ahead, but let's skip ahead. When he says to his
Well,
people,
we've all seen it. We're fine.
yeah, well, he wants to throw them into the event horizon and kill them, obviously. And he said, like, we're going to bury this Stargate so that no one will ever come and none of these demons will ever come back. And that was my first thought too. I'm like, you don't want to keep your options open. Like, I don't care if you're thinking this is like a 5-decade plan, but eventually you don't want to go to like maybe a Hoth type planet just for something a little different.
Well, and you know, do you know
Everyone
what?
takes a
Do you know what the
vacation.
winters are like on this planet?
Yeah, you really haven't been there that long because that
6 weeks, was it?
definitely 4. I think they said for the first 4 weeks. So I guess it's probably been a while since Connor, who helped them in the beginning, the surviving member of SG9, said that for the first 4 weeks. So I guess it was around about 6. This is the first time that we've heard a mission going longer than 24, 48 hours because we only ever follow SG1 obviously, and they only ever go on these missions. And if we don't hear back from you in 24 hours, we're closing the iris and switching the codes or whatever. So I guess the backstory that we
going to blow the out of this mountain. That's what's going to happen.
it's a go-to every single time. And what's your playbook? I've really only got one page. Blow mountain. Okay, cool.
Close the iris.
Self-destruct.
Self-destructs.
Yeah. So
So I'm interested in what Reese has to say, being the newbie. First time seeing it, Reese. What are your thoughts?
Honestly, the first time I watched it, I fell asleep. Not even halfway through, but I did rewatch it. It was, I don't know, it was sort of, it was good to see, I mean, other teams other than SG1, but I don't think, it didn't really make sense to me. It didn't really have a point to it. But yeah, I don't know, I just found it a bit confusing and what the whole point of it was, and yeah.
It had to be like to do with Tilk being the hero, maybe, because he had all the information about the shield that came up, and you needed 2. No one else knew about. I'm only thinking that was for a Tilk hero moment, and kind of.
Yet at the same
Who
time,
knows?
and one more that I'll get to that end fight. And when Jackson shows up to say, "No, don't listen to this guy. Look, he's a false god. Okay, he's about to chuck them into the wormhole." And then old mate Local shows up with the staff weapon. I'm like, I think sending you in place of Teal'c to a fight might have been a mistake. Yeah. Like, Teal'c was only back there to pretty much flick a switch. Like, you couldn't have shown... Like, that inept idiot was probably smart enough to go, hey, when you see a gunshot go over this way, because... He immediately knew how to properly fire that thing.
Yeah.
You know,
Accurately, too.
accurately enough that and quickly, like, he didn't have any sort of kickback off it.
Yeah.
He's able to fire 2 quick shots in the same direction
He's
to
a
give
pretty
Teal'c the
solid,
signal.
skinny man.
I just feel that maybe Teal'c would have better served the fight, than this guy, because they were relying on Daniel Jackson and a guy that had previously thought that this insane human was an all-powerful god. Like, maybe not your strongest members. I don't know.
The only way I could justify that, I assume, is that they wanted him to be able to show...
Yes.
he can be the leader or whatever.
Yeah,
And they did
their
sort
own
of
people.
focus that last
Yeah.
shot on him as well.
Yeah.
When they disappeared and they said, look, we think we've done enough, it was sort of him, but I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess they...
Sure.
You know,
guys
we can
have
pass
a good time
this-
about it.
Yeah.
We're out of this shithole.
Sort yourselves out.
I want to see the conversation of like Daniel asking Teal'c to hand over his staff weapon. He's like, can I borrow that for a second?
I got an idea, Tilk.
I reckon it just would have been one of those. He just looks at him, raises the eyebrow, and then just. I mean, you can't. The hand just goes over. He gives it to him. It's just.
Just raises the eyebrow.
Yeah,
and
no
just
verbals.
Comes back when he scratches and you up.
But I think
It's the only one I got.
just to get into the deeper side of my opinion and why the episode was created is sort of to show that while the Goa'uld are essentially the evil, the posing as gods, evil beings, they just thrive on their people worshipping them and all that kind of stuff. Showing the whole American and Air Force side of going out and saying, no, they're the bad guys and we're sort of trying to save everyone. It shows that it even is in the human trait that when worshipped, it can be quite an addictive thing. And so I mean, the only thing that sticks out with me is going, he was only there for a couple of weeks. So how fucking mentally weak was this dude? If he goes to someplace for a couple of weeks and all of a sudden goes, I'm a fucking god. But I think it was sort of created to show that they were still very new in the Stargate program, and while they spent the whole time going, these bad guys are, they're bad and they love to get worshipped, and it's a terrible thing to want to get worshipped like gods and everything. Oh shit, we actually have people, like our people are doing that as well. Crap. Okay. It's something that is not just confined to the bad guys.
Psych evaluations are necessary.
It's an internal struggle.
Check the back of the neck and a psych
and it's a
evaluation.
very human trait to sort of love the power. You see like people in charge of everything don't want to give up that power. You see politicians, you see people in military, you see people in any sort of high ranking. If you sort of tell them, we want you out of the job, we're going to put someone else in, they'll hate that. So you sort of think, imagine people worshipping you as a god. And so I think it's just trying to show that it's more of that internal struggle of fighting the urge to want to be worshipped and all that kind of stuff.
And for me,
That's not a bad point. I feel like it was lazy hiding. They tried to hide it behind the radiation on the planet. Like what Lincoln just said, I think is a really cool idea. But what I would have liked to have seen instead is maybe have a Goa'uld not implant on one of our own, but actually just talk him around.
Yeah.
Not have to take him over with another symbiont. Talk him round to how great it is to be worshipped and have all these, and do like the soft sell and seduce someone.
I think
into
that would have actually been a pretty decent idea. I
That
think
would have
they
to come
use the
later, though, I
radiation
think.
as a way of going, look, everyone that's in the Stargate program isn't mentally weak. There had to have been something to set off his mind to make
Didn't
him
they
go
say
crazy
that he
Jack
was in a
Sparrow
hospital
style.
or something at one point? Maybe I just misconstrued that as...
Well, Carter said something about him. He was in Black Ops, so he was obviously like
That's right.
on some serious missions, and
Yeah.
he's
Seen some
done.
shit,
yeah,
man.
he's seen some dark days, and then obviously she broke his heart, gave him his ring back. She broke off the engagement because she could see that mentally maybe he wasn't the most stable person or whatever. And then all of a sudden they come clashing back together at SG1. She's, he was really happy to see me, and I'm like, you've clearly never broken up with a guy before. He will put on that face.
He enslaved people because of you.
He hates your guts. But for me, I think the saving point early on was actually O'Neill when they were setting up the perimeter and they're setting up like the boundary or
What
whatever.
was
and
with that?
I don't even know what
It
the
made
little-
sense the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
But the second time I'm like, what is that going to do?
I wasn't actually watching because I was like. I was doing other things. You fell asleep. Reese, I didn't fall asleep. I was actually ironing a shirt while I was watching this. So I clearly didn't.
What this episode made you do?
I was focused on the collar at the time.
Thanks, Robert C. Cooper.
There's iron in there.
Piece of shit.
But they set it up, and then they obviously threw something to test it. The alarms go off, and O'Neill, he walks off, and he's like, well, if any rocks sneak up on us, we'll have plenty of warning. And so he was just taking the piss out of it, even though he just sort of, he'd seen, obviously...
spent hours setting
that
it up.
kind of guy,
The
like hearing
perimeter's
horror
so
stories,
close.
right?
We got
Like,
a
they
floodlight
have
over
an-
here and an alarm.
They'd have about an eighth of a second warning.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's
Which
it.
they did.
It's another SG team with like semi-automatic weapons.
Yeah, that's it.
It's like, well, we've got a 3-foot perimeter around us. It'll be fine.
But not only that, it was when he went from joking around to then being really told that the full story from Connor. And then they showed a quick shot of O'Neill, and it was like, oh shit, like he's my counterpart in the SG9 team, like he's me in that team, and he's been corrupted. And O'Neill's probably very confident at this stage that he could not be like that. Like how could you be like that? And then he hears the story, he's like, oh shit, like I wouldn't have thought that about this guy. Clearly, he knows this bloke from the the SGC. They might not have a lot to do with each other, but I'm sure that all the heads of each SG team have met at some point and went out for drinks or something. I
There's a huge backstory Mitch has made up.
No,
just to justify how shit this episode
While
is.
he's ironing.
honestly, not even trying to justify it, because you walk away and you're like, okay, that wasn't the most exciting episode at all, and I'm not trying to defend that it was, but for me it was like just that one shot of O'Neill, and I think it was just great acting from Richard Dean Anderson, even just for a second to say, oh shit, that could be me. And so, look, while you said it was a bit of a Teal'c hero moment at the end, for me, it wasn't an O'Neill episode, but that could have made it an O'Neill episode where it was like, well, that's me and that team, so I'm going to try and help him because I would hope someone would do the same for me or something. But
now that you've said it, I kind of feel like I'm re-editing the last few episodes in my head, because when you went here, we actually spoke about the idea of, in the last episode, the Broca Divide is the first time you see O'Neill really uncomfortable with aliens kneeling at him.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
no, get up, get up, get up.
yeah.
Remember we spoke about how there was that weird jump in logic between like finding the symbols from Chulak and leading to a planet and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I almost feel like if this
Because
episode...
we said that we didn't care. He didn't care as much on Chulak until after
Yeah.
this, maybe, obviously.
So maybe I feel like if this episode had come before the Broca Divide, that would have given a nice through line for O'Neill. In that now he's
true.
because he wasn't uncomfortable on Chulak that when
Yeah.
people were kneeling in front of him, but as of the Broca Divide, he was. So
Yeah.
maybe just flipping these episodes could have actually made this episode a little more, obviously not better, but it would at least
bit
add
more
another,
sense.
add another thread to the tapestry.
Make the sub story a little bit better. And like you said, and then too, like and you made a great point. I wasn't here, but obviously I listened to the show that Emancipation, not our favourite episode as a collective group, but
it's my favourite so far. Just looking back on my notes here.
But it would have been far better served had it have been maybe 7th or 8th or 16th in the season, because then you would have earned a few of those storylines rather than sort of set you up on a high, then to show, like it shows you them traversing across the galaxy and then back on Earth, all the dangers that can come back and threaten you at home. And then Emancipation. It's like, oh, come on, guys. Like, we need that third step,
Yeah.
We need
You
to
needed
really kick it into gear. And
Not that you needed more action, but just something to get your imagination going and coming back for more.
yeah.
than
And we've
just-
definitely got that. I know in the next couple of weeks, or we talk about the next few episodes, they're very different episodes as far as things, the ideas for stories and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
this is very different to what Cold Lazarus will be next week. And Cold Lazarus very different to the Nox the following week that we're going to talk about. So, yeah, we needed something like that to kick off from episode 2. But anyway, I digress.
This episode did give us two very important things, though. One, it's the first reference to the Wizard of Oz,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is brilliant.
We're off to see the wizard. They're probably still after me, so. To Oz.
So, any indigenous lions, tigers, or bears I should lie awake worrying
So that was
about?
2.
Which it's just a really cool little, like something you never think of. It just adds that regret. And the other thing that it adds is the Michael Shanks do-rag.
Was that in
He
this
looks-
Is
one?
that the first time?
I'm
it's been
pretty
used?
sure this is the first time he's used the do-rag, and he looks
what?
boss.
What?
The
The
do-rag
do-rag.
is rag.
Oh, yes,
along
of
his
course,
head.
of course.
The Shanksy do-rag.
Oh, I would never have picked that it would have been this early in his run.
Merchandising be going crazy.
Give me a green do-rag.
What do you want? Do you want Jack's hat? No. Do you
There-
want Teal'c's staff? No, I want the do-rag.
I feel like that, was there a decision in the costuming department going, look, do we slap an SG1 logo on the top of that, or do we just leave it?
Because what is it normally called? It's not. Australians don't call it that, do they?
That's just a bandana.
That's
Bandana.
yeah. We
I
call it the
guess.
bandana. Yeah,
Bandana.
yeah. Oh, the do-rag's a little bit more though. You look kind of like it's
Oh,
tied
yeah,
up
it
and
does
look
droops
back,
down,
doesn't
half
it?
down with your
Yeah.
back and stuff like that.
I just
doesn't
call it that because Peter DeLuise calls it that in one of the director commentaries.
it? Well
so
then.
anything Peter
In
DeLuise
Deloise
goes
we
with.
trust.
Oh,
It does.
But I think in hindsight, it didn't stick out for me in the first couple of minutes because it was a pre-credit sequence. But in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, maybe he didn't. I'm talking about Hansen, Jonas Hansen, the Overlord, evil
Mob,
guy.
yeah.
That he perhaps didn't instruct his soldiers to, conserve energy and weapons and things, because when they killed one of their fellow team members at the start, he just shot him with a gun. And I'm like, if you're never going to return to Earth, maybe the bullets are a good thing to keep. Like, even just that one, if you're just willy-nilly just shooting people when you want, your whole, like, automatic power
stab him
over
in the
these guys-
face if he's down.
You've got
Like-
1,000 people around with sticks and stuff. Have them beat him to death. That would really
is an
set up the
apocalypse.
episode.
I think on top
Lord
of
of
that
the
though,
Flies, mother.
Have you seen The Walking Dead?
I think it's called
15 years.
doing that kind of like you think of how far gone this dude would go if he's already killing his teammates. Doing that would be using a weapon that none of them have ever seen before.
Yeah.
So that's a further show of his power.
Yeah, but
I don't really think he
It's-
cares
it's like
about
the
his loss
tyrant
of-
in
I don't really
Emancipation at
think
the
he's
end.
sort of thinking,
Yeah.
he's
Out of
not
the
planning
past.
long term when he's thinking of the bullets and stuff. He's just sort of going, "Yep, I'm going to go do this. Bang! Look what I can do with this. This thunder weapon that
Yeah.
I've got." Shows him more as being. I don't think he sort of thought long term about that. He probably would have thought about that in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
But at that
When he's
time,
got
it was
rocks.
kind of like, "I'm a god. Watch how I'm a god." And yeah, good chat.
But and I know you keep touching on it, Reese, obviously being the new guy to the show. Just little stabs of humour in there that they don't. Out of nowhere, no context of the story, and I know that you've got the grab for us here, Maddie. But when they were obviously eating, and we talk about in previous podcasts like how much money is going into this entire program, and yet they're clearly being sent on these intergalactical missions with really, really bad microwavable dinners or something.
Just standard US Air Force field rations.
and here's a good example.
This tastes like chicken.
So what's wrong with that?
It's macaroni and cheese.
And he's face acting.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
he was like he's actually eating it. He's
Yeah.
like, I just had a crunch, and there shouldn't be a crunch.
I thought it was a great throwback to the movie as well, given that James Spader's Daniel Jackson is like reaches into an armadillo from
Yeah,
an alien
that's right.
planet, pulls out and goes,
Tastes like a chicken.
tastes like chicken, and keeps eating. But like actual human field rations, he's like, I ain't putting up with this shit.
Yeah. Give me armadillo any day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like the little inside, or not the inside jokes, but the little jokes that they play because it shows. I think for the longevity of it, it shows that they are a team, but they sort of take the piss out of each other and have a joke around at each other. Makes it more personable.
And it can get really melodramatic really quickly with the heightened level of tension that they put into some of these episodes. So it's really great to make them seem a little more realistic and
that's right.
and see the moments in between all the dramatic stuff.
Yeah.
I'm actually enjoying the Carter and Jackson relationship. I've kind of forgot that how well their relationship was, and in this episode and a couple more, they go more into that, and it's something that I didn't really pick up on before because I love Jackson and I love O'Neill and Tilks. I think they're the ones that really stood out for me was O'Neill and Tilk more so than theirs. So it's interesting. I'm enjoying watching their relationship blossom.
And there's been plenty of moments, and we've even made fun of some of them from this particular episode about the sort of just in your face sort of feminist sort of storylines or bits of dialogue and things. And then there's like maybe even unintentional sort of throws against that again. And there was Teal'c sort of getting an idea of Earth women.
Whoa, where are you going?
I can't just stay here and watch him beat that man to death.
You will be captured.
Uh-huh.
Then you think that's a plan?
Daniel, I can get to Hanson. That's what the Colonel was talking about.
Well, can you at least wait until he gets back?
The man could be dead by then.
We should have stopped it.
We would have failed.
Yeah, he knows what he's talking about.
Getting the grasp on the back.
I don't know if you remember, because I don't know exactly. I mean, for me, I watched this episode today, but did anyone else look at Hanson, the bad guy, and think maybe he looked like a skinnier version of Zach Galifianakis? Because he sort of struck me with that beard, and even at some times he spoke with a little highness and a little bit of a lisp in his voice. I'm like, No, you're way too old at that time to be actually a young Zach Galifianakis.
I thought he looked. Now this is probably going to get me shot again for my reference to like a weird '90s sitcom.
Here we go. Is it something new?
It's not Roseanne.
Yeah,
Is it something new?
It's not Roseanne. It's not
here we go.
Roseanne. He
Kyle,
reminded me of this weird neurotic artist guy in that Caroline in the City sitcom.
Oh wow!
Yeah, wow.
I do remember the show.
Who was he? Who was in that? Who was Caroline?
It was Back to
How
the
old
Future,
are
bitch,
you?
wasn't it?
Carolina in the City.
I'm the youngest of three, so it's like I was watching stuff I should not have been watching when I was like 7.
Isn't it the mum from Back to the Future?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is that Caroline in the City?
Yeah.
Actually, she was the first one I thought of, and I'm like, no, that had a different name. But you're right. Yeah. Good throwback. Wow.
Yeah, well, we
90s sitcoms. It's
so
my
we
bag.
know about the sitcom. We don't know who you're talking about, though.
Yeah, I heard the name of it.
And people are obviously listening because in our Facebook Messenger chats, you send a lot of GIFs that are Roseanne related, and I'm like, how do they even get there? Who decided to put them there? But people are listening, Matty. There is a demand for it, and you are creating it.
God bless you, internet.
The only other thing I want to bring up, there's music at the end where they, Carter and O'Neill have this sort of moment. They're about to go back to the gate or whatever, and the music is it. I swear to God, it's exactly the same tune as the Independence Day theme, which I'm like, it's a bit of a Roland Emmerich sort of throwback.
I read that in some notes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So
there's a couple of
not
websites
crazy.
I go to that sort of are like a Wikipedia style website, but just for Stargate.
Yeah.
And they have sort of notes for each episode, and I just sort of see if there's anything interesting there. And
Yeah.
someone mentioned
Well,
that.
here, I'll play it and
but
see
I
what you
couldn't
think.
corroborate it.
Think we should tell them to bury the gate after we're gone?
Tilk seems to think the Goulds won't be back.
Maybe we should come back and check on these guys.
I think we've done enough, don't you?
I'm jacked up already.
The president saved the planet!
All right, you alien assholes.
Oh, good stuff. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, that's it. We're at 30 minutes. Anyone else got anything else? This is going to be a short one. Or should be a short
Needs to be a short one.
Yeah, maybe the real episode.
I've got that audio bit
So-
where they explain why how they can get away with shooting in Canada for every episode.
For a planet with a UV radiation as high as this one's supposed to have, the plant life seems to be doing very well.
Apparently Abydos was the exception, not the rule, as far as trees are concerned.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, in order for a planet to support human life, there must be some sort of carbon-based vegetation, right?
It is no accident. Many Stargate worlds were terraformed by the Goa'uld centuries ago.
To all look like Canada.
That's how we get away with being in Vancouver the whole time.
That quote actually ends with him saying, "It is because of tax cuts in Vancouver."
Hey, at the end when they were throwing him into the Stargate, was that supposed to be going back to Earth? Was it?
Yeah.
But the iris was
He'd taken
so,
away the GDOs, so
he's dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
God, yeah.
And then
He's a dunk.
Smear on the
He's one of them.
Smear the Ritsu, you're right. At that point, Hammond and Gary Jones are sitting
what the
there.
hell was
They're
that?
like, another Goa'uld. It's like, no, that's actually one of your friends.
Yeah.
Who
Decon
turned into a
team.
tyrant. Yeah, whatever.
That was one of your
Decon team to the embarkation room, clean that up.
But that is a highlight of this episode. It's the first time we see a Stargate not being vertical, being horizontal.
Oh, yeah.
Which, inspires me to one day make a swimming pool like that.
I already know. All right, we're going to be doing birthday cakes. I would love to have a door in the shape of a Stargate, door into your room or something like that.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
You go for the uber
Like
nerd,
a
right?
70s
A coffee
arch.
no, a dinner table. Oh yeah.
I was thinking you go like uber geek and you merge worlds. You have a Hobbit house, but instead of the round door, it's wooden. It is actually a Stargate. You're like, where am I going? Am I going to Abydos or to Mordor? Ah!
Wedding cakes in Stargate fashion.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's endless.
Yeah, I'd keep getting divorced just so I can have another wedding cake.
Totally worth it, baby.
Babe, do you want to get married again? Can we have another Stargate cake?
you could even make the wedding cake like the Stargate, and then as it gets higher with all, it's just like the event horizon forming.
Oh, yeah, the
How
whoosh.
sick would that
It's the
be?
whoosh.
No,
Yeah,
have one half a Milky Way gate and the other half a Pegasus gate coming together.
the Pegasus Gate.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I'm speaking on behalf of
That's
Reese.
Atlantis.
I will tell Jason Momoa you said that,
No.
and you'll never get a piggyback ever again.
Zing!
you got to get one piggyback in order to even talk about that. motherfucker. Should I show you again my piggyback with Momoa?
No, because I don't want to be sitting next to you while you've got another erection.
Show us the uncut version.
Of his penis or the picture?
Where you didn't Photoshop clothes on. Yeah, well, do you want to add in that the Colonel thing? Was it your
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is what I was pissed off about. Bloody O'Neill kept saying to his team, "All right, you go back to the Stargate and let him." And they're like, "No, I'm staying here." And he goes, "No, all right, you go back." "No, I'm staying here."
Does it say Colonel anywhere on my uniform?
Like, he's the f***ing boss. Do as he
no one-
says.
listen to the guy.
He's trying to pull rank.
Yeah. That's true. Like you'd
Just
think,
shoot him.
would you get?
That's what I was.
That's
Shoot him. We'll shoot Till because he can heal, right?
Just set an example.
Sorry, Till. I know you didn't say anything, but
O'Neill,
when you
we
get
have
back
been
to
to
the
17
start-
missions. You have to stop doing this.
Getting real tired of your shit. What if you get back into the briefing room? Just be like, you just be walking along. Be like, Daniel, can I talk to you for a minute? I kind of fucking asked you to go back home. You didn't. We're gonna really have to look at that.
You get
And I
how
was like,
you're
Carter, come over here.
you get how you're a civilian, right?
Yeah.
I just
I'm not
got
getting court-martialed over beating your ass.
I just got a vision of him returning from the Stargate, and as they're walking down the ramp, he's like, "General, I was telling them to come home, and they wouldn't listen to me, and I'm the boss.
I'm a fucking colonel. This isn't even in the fucking military.
I want a new team."
No,
SG9's got a vacancy. What are you gonna do?
Keep the alien. He's fucking cool. He's sweet. But those other two can f*** off.
That'll do us. That is the First Commandment. That is episode 5 of Get Into Gates.
oh, there was no religious jokes. Fuck.
You missed your chance, Robert C. Cooper. You had one job.
Pretty sure the whole show's just a joke about religion.
Just a dig at
true.
organised religion.
Yeah.
A 10-year
No, but the whole
dig.
thing is though. The whole thing is that no, we gotta and I'm pretty sure we've said it before. Now, you guys, you're worshipping false gods. You just got to come back home to America. We got Jesus. All right?
There's only one God.
He ain't no false god.
And he ain't
That
no
white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired
we've
boy
never
born in
seen
Africa.
him. We've never seen him, but I'm sure he's there.
That he died for your sins.
I read a
But,
book about him. It's
All of a sudden,
amazing.
fuck,
Still
yeah.
incredible.
They were there. That's how they wrote the book.
Haven't you seen Mel Gibson's movie? He's real.
Imagine just all the system lords coming along to those guys and be like, we were actually reigning worlds about a couple of thousand years before your guy rocked up. Nope, not
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Not true.
Oh,
I
you're
don't-
talking about Jesus Christ, JC. Yeah,
Yeah.
met him, man.
Yeah, maybe.
Know him.
Ra
my
rocks up.
bitch.
He's like, oh, Jesus, that guy owes me $20.
Is he still around?
He's the maddest magician out there.
His dad built me like an extension on my pyramid and I never paid him. Shit.
And his uncle builds wicked boats. Fit all your pets in there. All right, well, take two. That is Get in the Gate. So thank you very much, The First Commandment. You've given us many a memory to not have ongoing in the series. But Robert C. Cooper, we can't wait to see what you bring us next. Yes. So, yeah.
Creating an army.
Until we need him on the show, and then you're more than welcome. You can
Brad Wright.
Brad Wright first, obviously. First right of refusal. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram simply at Get Into Gates, SoundCloud, and iTunes, depending on your preference. And you can also hit us up, send us an email if you want to talk about the episode. If you want to maybe send us some questions for some future episodes we can get to into the next couple of shows and reviews and podcasts, just simply getintogate@gmail.com. I would appreciate you didn't do that to the headphones, Lincoln. Oh, wow. Okay.
You were doing imitation of vagina-faced aliens from season 3, weren't you?
I thought he was doing that guy from Return of the Jedi that we were always talking
Yeah.
about.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Lando's
vagina
mouth. Lando's guy on the down low. Maddie, socials, where we got you?
High pitch Maddie.
That's on Insta link.
Link_Lewis.
Beautiful. Reestova.
I'm at the Flying Gibson.
Brendan.
At the Brendan Gibson.
Beautiful. And at Mitch_Lewis. We'll be back this time next week to talk Cold Lazarus. What may it entail? Hopefully less than the First Commandment. And,
Or more.
well, more than the First Commandment. Less of the
quality.
First Commandment. Less of Robert C. Cooper. More of something else. We'll be back next week. Get into Gates.
Or of anything else.
GetIntoGeek.com